Welcome to Supply Circles, stories from the innovators, disruptors and improvers in supply chain management today, brought to you by AI Group.
This is James Scotland. Before we start today's episode, I want to just share something with you. We often hear from people like me who speak constantly at conferences the need to acknowledge traditional elders, past, present and emerging. We recently heard of the passing of Unipingle, a wonderful elder from the Lenape mob up in Northern Territory. I knew him quite well for a while and I'm saddened by his loss. Next time you hear of people saying, let's acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, remember these powerful, erudite, wonderful people who lead our traditional owners through difficult times. Vale Unipingle. Hello, welcome to Supply Circles. My name is James Scotland, and in this podcast, we ask the question, how can we in Australia create supply circles that are resilient and sustainable at a time when we're implementing the challenges of the 3Ds? You know them: digitalisation to keep up with your peers and your industries, decarbonisation to meet your legal requirements and targets by 2050, and even in some states 2045, and ongoing disruptions, which come in many shapes, not only in global pandemics, but also in industry disruptions, product disruptions, logistics interruptions and challenges, global inflation, and many more. Each fortnight, I delve into different sections of the end-to-end supply chain. I chat with fascinating and interesting people, and we try to have some fun along the way. Today, I'm going to dive into digitalisation and disruption in the Australian manufacturing industry. My guest is a business owner who is right there in the trenches every day, identifying and addressing and resolving the challenges of being a supplier in the manufacturing industry today. Let's get some first-hand stories from the front line. I've called this episode Despatches from the Front. My guest is the resilient, the ebullient Sam Matandos. Hello, Sam. You're the CEO of Moxon Industries in Sydney. How are you?
I'm great, James. Thanks for the intro, and it's a pleasure to be here and share our story.
So you're the CEO of Moxon Industries. In a recent episode of Supply Circles, Sarah Pavillard from Adroita described her company as small and mighty. How would you describe Moxon? How did you get to this point in time?
Well, how do I describe Moxon? In a few words, we're dynamic, flexible. We have to be productive. We have to be efficient, consistent. Most importantly, we're a set of miracle workers that are holding this industry together.
Miracle workers. Small and mighty and miracle workers. Is it that tough?
It is. It's definitely a tough game, and it's definitely a different game to what was around 10 or 20 years ago. So
what is the game? What is your background? You're in, the business is in fine tolerance heavy machinery. Is that a fair call?
Yeah, fair call. To I suppose to narrow in, we are manufacturers of safety critical components, predominantly in the rail industry. And when we talk about the rail industry and safety critical, we're talking about passengers and passenger safety. So every product that we manufacture has to be perfect, in tolerance, in spec. Traceability is a big thing. And to hone all that into one business, under one roof, one system, with some of the best tradesmen that we've got in the country is quite a challenging business.
I think it's a fascinating business. I grew up in Sydney and like just about every city in Australia, we had the red rattlers. They were bloody terrible trains. They rattled and they were cold and you couldn't open the windows and the doors were impossible to try and open to get out. And now you get in these wonderful pieces of machinery. They're just spectacular. Have you been involved in that industry for a while?
Yeah, I suppose our company background or my personal background, I've been in the rail industry since late 1994. And the rail industry has a high barrier to entry. It's difficult. And then you have to have a niche set of skills to be in that rail industry. And obviously, to be in the game for that long, you have to continually improve and be a better and better supplier. Otherwise, someone else will take your spot.
Yeah, it's competitive. What about you? How long have you been the CEO? How did you end up as CEO?
Oh, the backstory.
Yeah, why not? Come on, tell us about Sam.
I don't like really talking too much about myself, but I'll try to keep it short and sweet. My father started a tool-making business in 1982. I was about 3 years of age, and he named the business after his son and his nephew. So the business is called Sam Engineering, and it was a tool-making business that did a lot of amazing things that I dare say not many shops in Australia could have done at the time. Press tools, injection molding tooling, and we would support the large manufacturing businesses. And we grew up, at school holidays, weekends, playing around in the factory. So it was almost like our destiny that when we finished school, we took on an apprenticeship in the family business. And as you know, they say first generation starts the business, the second will build it, and the third will probably destroy it. I was in the second generation position, and our business grew from, a very small business up to about 60 employees. And around 12 years ago, we were acquired by a group that wanted to expand the business nationally. And handing over the reins as the MD in 2010 is something quite difficult to do.
Yeah.
However, for many reasons outside our control, the group that took on the business ultimately took a different direction, and their business had collapsed. So in 2013, I really wanted to get back into business again. I'd spent a couple of years working in the rail industry for Downer, and I knew small business was where I wanted to be. I wanted to be able to be the guy that made the decisions, write the check and build a business, create a culture within that. And we're 9.5 years now into Moxon Industries, and we would not have it any other way.
So you bought the business back from the previous owners, is it?
Kind of, in some aspects. We bought Moxon Industries, which had started in 2001 as a OEM in the food manufacturing industry.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when our former business eventually closed up, there were certain elements that we were able to, like we re-employed a lot of people that had been with us for 30 years.
Wow.
And then re-entering the rail industry with our reputation that we had pre-2010 was a relief for our customers, knowing that we understand their industry, the product, and we're back to have a second bite at the cherry.
You mentioned that you work for Downer, who are one of the train manufacturers in Australia, and now you're on the other side, the supplier. That's fascinating. I didn't know that. What's the difference between working on the two sides of the track?
Well, with utmost respect to any large corporate company, being in small business and dealing with large corporates, you have this perception that they're musclier, they're more geared up, they've got more power behind them. And it's not until you join the company that you realise that ultimately just the departments within a large business are no different to a small business. I mean, yes, you work for Downer, but it's your manager and that team, that department that you're working for, that really drives those outcomes. So working for Downer in small departments, I got to see how political departments can get, whether it's supply chain dealing with engineering, or engineering dealing with operations, and operations driving sales. And what I did realize working there is that if you don't have the right culture, you don't have a consistent culture throughout your business, you're basically creating silos, and it's very hard to get everyone on the same page. So within a couple of years, I realized, we're ready to get back into business. And having been on that side of the fence, I was exposed to the corporate, the governance, which was brilliant. A lot of small business aren't big on governance, on risk, and all these mitigation techniques. So being able to have that corporate insight and adopting that into a small business really makes Moxon a very unique company.
It certainly does. Understanding that governance and risk and supply chain and risk is a key focus of your buyer. It makes you a good supplier.
Spot on. And we're constantly talking with our customers, identifying risks that they may have in their supply chain and why we are their best option to mitigate that risk.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Addressing their challenges. What a great lesson.
Yeah. Spot on.
Let's talk about you for a bit longer as CEO. Often it's said that as a CEO, you can only really focus on one thing. You've got to have one main focus for your business. Is like maybe growth, rapid growth. I know you're talking about growing. There might be, nailing your quality is the biggest focus right now, or managing the risk. What's your main focus? What do you come to work to do as the main thing on your to-do list? And can you do more than one, I guess, is the other part of the question.
Yeah, two parts to that. Our main focus, or my main focus, is ensuring that we can keep food on the tables of our employees, that they can come to work knowing that they've got job security, and that they can go home knowing that their mortgage will be able to get paid, and that they're not at fear of getting a tap on the shoulder like you would in a large company, dedicate your life and then be made redundant. And so our main thing really is ensuring the well-being and that our employees have that confidence in the business, that they're involved in the Australian manufacturing industry, and that they're proud to be in that part.
That means you focus a lot on your cash flow. You've got a real good eye on your cash flow then.
Yeah. So the second part is when you said you can't do one thing and only one thing, because to ensure sustainability and job security, there's so many factors that need to come into play. Do we have enough work? Do we have the capacity to meet the customer's deadlines? Do we have the capability to actually produce those parts? Do we have a strategy in place? Have we looked at our risks? And all those aspects, they're all incremental. It's not really a case in our business of, what comes first, the chicken or the egg. It's really working on all of those things at incremental level. The biggest thing that we really ensure is right is that our foundation is correct. And when I say our foundation, it's not so much about systems, policies, procedures. It's one level under that, and that's our culture. Because systems and policies, procedures, as you know, they can be changed. But trying to shift culture in a business is really difficult. So instead of having that problem, we just make sure that we focus on our culture, that our team pulls together, and then we'll build our systems and processes above that.
Was it Deming? I can't remember. An academic said, I'm sure it was, Deming said culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that was from a guy who taught and explained strategy. He believed that the culture was the fundamental. I take it you agree entirely.
1,000,000%. And you don't have to hear it from me. You can come and ask anyone that works for us about the workplace culture. And I'm not saying that we're like Google and all these other, fancy things, but our culture really is customer first and make sure that their needs are met and ensuring that we all work together. Like we say to our guys and girls, when you're at your best self, you're more cooperative, you're happier, you're willing to help people, you're able to think clearer, you're less stressed. And when you're at your worst self, you're grumpy, angry, you're less willing to help. You get all these, it's not my job type of attitudes. So we try to promote everyone to work at their best self. So when someone does say to you, hey, what do I do here? Or what's your opinion on this? That culture that ties them together ensures that your productivity is not sacrificed in any way by people saying, well, I'm in the sales department, you're in purchasing, that's your job.
In a recent episode, I was talking to Nicola, and she was saying that having that kind of leadership, that sort of culture, helps you with your suppliers because they pick up on the vibe. They don't keep things secret from you. They ring up and say, we've got a problem with on-time delivery for this particular order, but also helps you with your relationship with your buyer. So a good culture is critical to effective supply chain management, according to Nicola. Again, I think I'm putting words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're saying the same thing. Have you seen it from outside your organisation, not just inside your organisation?
Yeah, so with our supply chain, we've got them trained to let us know before it becomes a problem, before the job runs late, to be able to be transparent and keep that communication open. But also the culture's in a point where we do a lot of urgent jobs, a lot of breakdowns come in. And if you generally have to wait in line to get something heat treated, you'll be waiting 2 or 3 weeks. We don't have to wait in line. We'll get it done overnight because of our strength of our relationships over years with our supply chain.
With your suppliers? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With our customers, it's very similar. Customers can pick up their phone and ring, say, listen, I know this thing's going to take 2 weeks to turn around. You reckon you can do it in 2 or 3 days? And it's mathematical after that. Do you have the resources available? If not, what job do we need to stop to get that job done to look after that customer? And the circle just continues.
Sure. Well, that moves from culture onto digitalization, but let's come back to that. I wanted to challenge something with you, get your thoughts on it, because you are there on the front line. Let's talk about manufacturing in Australia. When Ford and Holden announced in May 2013 that they were stopping vehicle manufacturing in Australia, we heard constantly that the manufacturing industry was dead. And many people say that's not true, that it's actually quite strong. According to Dr. Jeff Wilson, the AI Group Head of Research and Economics, manufacturing, especially advanced manufacturing, is actually booming in Australia. It contributes $117 billion of value added to the economy. That was in 22, making it the 6th largest sector in the Australian economy, behind mining, health and social care, professional services, and financial services and construction. Badly read sentence. I was thinking, though, it's not easy, though, is it, Sam? You'd be right down the front line. Manufacturing has struggled with supply chain disruptions and labour shortages during the pandemic. And as advancements come into advanced manufacturing and critical technology, as all of that's gathering pace, it's got to be tough to be a smaller business in a really big industry. What's the story? How do you see it from your perspective? Is it booming? Is it challenging? Give me the sort of raw from the front type of view.
All right. Well, I suppose I better start saying the disclaimer with all due respects to Dr. Jeff Wilson's numbers that he plucked out, 117 billion of value to the economy in 2022. Look, I don't doubt it. There probably is that much money in the industry. And on paper, at a high level, those contracts are probably there. I understand the automotive industry decided to close up shop 10 years ago, and people can still have confidence that manufacturing is still strong. But on the coalface, I probably beg to differ to some degree. And the reason I can say that is when you look at a large contract, whether it's infrastructure projects, new rolling stock, new assets for the Defence Force, you break down that product and you say, okay, of that product, of that X amount of billion or million, how much of it is reflective into the manufacturing space? So there's the OEMs that are specified on the build to supply product.
Original equipment manufacturers?
Yeah, yep. Equipment manufacturers. I'll use a train as an example. Could be air conditioning, door systems, brakes, passenger seats, drivetrain. You take out all those subsystems from the OEMs, you're left with about 2 or 3 components. Right. Electrical, assembly, and the manufacturing of the metal components, whether they're cast, fabricated, and machined. In saying that, the manufacturing industry is strong and we are busy. And I think that can come down to a few things. As we know, over the last 10 or 20 years, we've had the baby boomers that have waved the white flag, sailed away into the sunset. And then we've got that theory, the survival of the fittest. And there's been a lot of engineering companies where their owners are in their 50s and 60s and they said, do you know what? We're just not interested in continually investing to stay competitive when our customers are offshoring parts that we used to make. We're still dealing with manufacturers now where there's local content, local work, but they have the option to procure from overseas. So at the coalface, there's a lot of engineering companies. They're all busy, and they're busy because there's just not many of us left that have made that investment to stay competitive.
One of the one of the good things of my life is that I've been able to help businesses transition from the baby boomers into the next generation and say it's time to change. You've got to change. Again, brings us to digitalisation, a whole bunch of issues, including culture. But Sam, the biggest issue in the Australian economy, particularly in manufacturing, is the availability of staff. So why, if it's not as busy as you're painting, why is there a lack of staff?
Yeah. Well, let's go back 10 or 20 years ago. How many kids wanted to leave school and do an apprenticeship as a fitter machinist or a boilermaker in an industry that was dying 10 or 20 years ago? How many kids want to say, I want to be the best fabricator in a dying industry? Or let's throw another example, tool making. No one even knows what a tool maker is anymore or what they do, but the importance of that art, that trade, it's all but gone because of that big gap in offshoring our manufacturing. So we've ended up with a skill shortage, a big gap. They've tried to plug that gap through skilled labour from overseas. And as you know, there's also a whole range of red tape to bring in tradies from overseas. So the only way to combat that is to bring back domestic manufacturing and encourage the younger guys to take up that apprenticeship in an industry that's booming, where they can see where their career could end up.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's not just in trades, though. People sort of say, why have we got so many overseas doctors? And that was because a long time ago, people stopped going into medicine. We weren't training doctors. We weren't training tradies. We didn't train the skills that we need in Australia. And I think that's being recognised. But the jobs of the future are changing, aren't they? A trade now is different from a trade 20 years ago. And a future, I guess that won't be motor mechanics, a future car mechanic will be totally different from in the past. How do we keep changing to keep training the people that we need? How do you see the training of trades?
Okay.
For the future is what I'm talking about.
For the future. So the current system is for a trade is to go through TAFE, as you know, to do an apprenticeship or a traineeship. We've got in.
It was about 4 years, I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
3 or 4?
Yeah, 3 years at TAFE and 1 year full time at work. I think training could probably be looked at differently, whether it's private training campuses or whether it's some niche training in specific areas within that industry. I know that some industries have started getting their apprentices. I'll use the rail industry as an example and explaining to them what that rail industry is all about. And I'm sure the defence does the same. So you could be studying fitting machining, but they need to be trained about the actual industry as well and what the importance that industry plays across the country. Like I said, most apprentices that become tradesmen don't stay tradesmen. They progress, their career just keeps moving. They end up in quality, project management, sales, CEOs.
Yeah, and of course, it's not just men; it's both genders. It's
correct.
A generic term. You raise an interesting point. I did my time in education with university and in corporate training, and one of the things that came out when we were looking at trades is that some crazy number, like 85% or something of tradespeople go into business ownership at some stage. So if you train as a plumber, at some stage you'll almost certainly start your plumbing business. And yet there's no training at all in how to be a manager, a leader, or a business owner. You were lucky you had the family influence. But do you see that other skill of being a tradie, the bit about being a business person, as important too, or is that for those that want to?
It's probably more important than the trade itself.
Okay, yeah.
The amount of small businesses that fail in the first 5 years, it's unfair. It's unfair to the plumber that went out and bought a van and said, I want to work for myself, and not having that business training, putting his family at risk with mortgages on equipment.
Yeah.
And in the end, they say it's not for me, or it didn't work out, or I did a job and didn't get paid. Business skills are not really taught. They're not taught. They're certainly not taught in high school. And I understand that you can go to university and learn these skills, but we've got to bring it back to something a little bit more simpler.
Yeah.
most successful people I know in business don't have academic qualifications. They found that the more books they read or the more they learnt, the more they understood the risks around getting into business. And when you understand the risk, you say, why would I get into business?
Why would I do that? Yeah.
So getting into business not knowing the risk is dangerous, but it's definitely being thrown in the deep end, and you only have one option then.
But if you're trying to build a good culture in a small business and you have tradespeople who have got an understanding of business, it will help you build your culture, because the understanding that the work doesn't automatically happen, that costs are important, the way the quality is important. The business trained tradesperson adds to what you're trying to achieve. I would argue.
Most of our tradies at some stage have said to us, I want to go out on my own. They haven't been able to succeed, and they've come back, and they know what it's like on the other side, and they're happy to forego all that responsibility and sleepless nights worrying where the next job's going to come from. But one thing they did learn is that without a customer, you've got no business.
Yeah.
And that makes them, a very valuable tradie to us.
Well, I said I wanted to call this episode Stories from the Frontline, and this is real frontline, isn't it? The fact that many people understand that it is difficult. Thankfully, there are people like you who can handle the sleepless nights and will take on the challenge. When we come back from the break, let's talk about digitalisation. This is a great chat, Sam. Thanks.
Sounds great.
If you have supply chain or business improvement challenges, contact AI Group's Business Improvement and Growth Hub. The Big Hub is a library of practical and relevant resources designed to assist member businesses to grow and improve. The Big Hub also includes an extensive network of experienced pre-qualified business improvement consultants. For more details, contact big@aigroup.com.au. That's big@aigroup.com.au.
Sam, I saw recently on a LinkedIn post that you made a short video of, I think, five reasons maybe as to why you should digitalise your business. And it was about keeping your business ahead of the pack. As you heard in the intro, this podcast is about saying the way to digitalise your business is to keep track with your peers and to better improve your supply chain performance. Picking up that video that you had on LinkedIn, why are you passionate about digitalisation, and what are the lessons we should learn about digitalising our business?
Yeah, thanks, James. I want to answer that question in two parts. One is the business owner, and the other as how the customer sees it. As the business owner, a small business that's growing, you have a lot of knowledge in your head. It could be how to do a job, how you quoted that, what methods you were going to use, how you're going to design your tooling, and being able not to be able to capture that information digitally. You win the order, you have to relay that message to somebody on the shop floor, how to make it, where's the material, where's the material certificate. Ultimately, you'll find yourself as a business owner stressed, overworked, and your phone will be ringing off the hook all day. You won't be able to go on a holiday. And if anything, you're causing damage to the business by not digitalising.
Well, you can't sell the business if it's in your head, all that stuff in your head. And secondly, it's the bus problem. If you get hit by a bus, the business comes to an end. Yeah. And those people you're supposed to be looking after aren't looked after because the bus wiped out their livelihood, being sort of graphic, but that's the story. Yeah, so you need to digitalise for that reason. For
that reason. We look at what we spoke about earlier, ensuring that employees have comfort over their job security. So getting the stuff out of the head and into a digital system also de-risks them, also de-risks our profile to our customer.
Oh, yeah.
We're able, with our digitalisation system that we've put in place, we're able to offer our customer information, whether it's traceability, repeatability. We're very accurate with our job costings. We understand where our efficiencies are at, and we're offering our customers now something different to what other engineering companies previously would offer, and that's transparency. Transparency in terms of this is the quote and this is how we got to that price using this hourly rate, this many hours for the job, this margin on the material. Having that system in place is basically a no-brainer. If you don't have it, you can't grow. And if you can't grow, you're shrinking. And if you're shrinking, you won't have a business in the next 5 years.
What sort of areas have you put digitalised processes into? Is it just machinery, or is it just your processes, or what specifically have you looked at to improve your processes?
Yeah, fortunately, I'm still at that young age where we're quite adaptable to technology. We've put it in all those aspects. So whether it's in the systems and the process, into our machine, I can give you a quick example. Our customer could draw a 3D model and just send us that model. We don't need 2D drawings. We don't need shop drawings. That model then can be fed straight into our CNC machine.
Oh, wow.
And programs written and machined up. So we're offering our customers that efficiency as well, where they don't have to sit there dimensioning and tolerancing their model. Just give us the model and we can look after it from there. So, yeah.
That's a great example of it, isn't it? Where you're solving a problem and creating efficiencies for your buyer, at the same time creating more capacity for yourself because you've cut out inefficient processes. But that leads me on to the next question I want to ask you is about growth. You've been working a lot, from what I understand, on trying to get super efficient and building, taking out the inefficiencies. That must give you extra capacity. How do you go about addressing the growth, making sure you've got enough work in to fill that extra capacity?
Yeah, good question. I suppose if I tap into that digitalisation component, how many small to medium engineering companies can click a button and see the availability on each of their work centres for the rest of the year?
Yeah, right.
So we've been able to see into that crystal ball. We can see our capacity, our available capacity, that is. And regarding the growth part, what's that saying? Is it turnover for vanity, profit for sanity?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So don't just grow for no reason.
And I've seen a lot of businesses grow in turnover, double, triple, quadruple their turnover, and their margins get smaller and smaller to the point where they said, you know what, we were better off 5 years ago when we were a smaller, leaner, meaner business.
Yeah, sure.
And that's something that we've been able to focus on through digitalisation, getting our efficiencies right to increase our throughput, which ultimately improves our bottom line.
Yeah, right.
And we use a theory most manufacturers should be aware of, and if they're not, I highly recommend that they either read the book or get their hands on it somehow. It's called The Goal, and it's based on the theory of constraints.
Right. Okay.
And that's a very worthwhile read for anyone in the manufacturing space about how to improve your throughput without having the fastest CNC machine or without having to work 2 shifts.
What's it called? The Goal?
The Goal,
yeah.
As in GOAL.
Yep.
And it's a fantastic read.
Well, when I was coming up through management, we used to talk about, they changed the title a little bit these days, but we used to talk about S&OP, Sales and Operational Planning. So what basically that was saying, try to figure out what's available capacity you've got. It was normally done on a spreadsheet, and then get your salespeople to sell in that capacity. But if you've got digital footprint that says, I've got this capacity coming up in this area at this time, and you can map that, the salespeople have a much better opportunity to be able to fill the pipeline from an intelligent point of view. And also your clients can too. Your clients can look at that and say, well, how about we drop a job into that area there? Does it work that way?
Yes, it works exactly that way. It was only a couple of weeks ago where we had a look at our availability on our work centres. Fabrication department was chock-a-block, let's say, for the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Uh-huh.
But we got capacity in laser cutting and in CNC turning. So the sales team focuses their shift on, okay, which customers can we go talk to pick up some work to say we've got the capacity to start the job tomorrow and you can have it the day after that. And without that visibility, you're basically guessing. And being able to offer customers short turnaround times and sticking to them is something that most small businesses can't do. And if they do it, they don't do it well.
This has been a great chat. Thank you, Sam. Would you recommend people go into small business? You said that you've got a lot of staff that have tried and said, nah. But you've been doing it for over 10 years now, did you say?
Yeah. So
what do you think people should do?
I suppose it comes down to understanding your why.
Uh-huh.
And once you know your why, and people have often asked me that question, and there's that book with Simon Sinek, Start With Why, and why organizations do what they do.
Yeah.
But if people are thinking to get into business because they think, you get the nice car and the holiday and the lifestyle, I'd say to them they should think again, because it's not enough of a why to get up every day and be at that coal face.
There's a short-term one, in a couple of years maybe.
And secondly, when they are ready to say, I do have a passion for business, or I do have a passion for employing people or seeing people's careers advance, they really got to be prepared to make sacrifices. And I know a lot of people that aren't prepared to make the sacrifice, and a lot of business people that have made the sacrifices to get to where they got to. They've been successful in business, but they've failed miserably in other aspects of their life. Being in business and being successful in business it's a very big, difficult juggling act. Some people can do it well, some people can't. I would say if anyone is contemplating getting into business, they need to reach out to me. More than happy to have a cup of coffee and give anyone the advice that they need, because I've learned the hard way through the ups and downs. And any advice that I could give to anyone to ensure that they're at least aware of what's required, it's priceless. You won't learn that stuff at any place.
Yeah, there's a fabulous book that I read years ago called Peak Performance, and it looks at all the very successful sporting teams around the world that have been able to be successful post highly skilled players. So the team was successful when Michael Jordan was playing, but they stayed successful. I think it's the Bulls. They stayed successful after Michael Jordan left. Australian netball has been at the top of the league for generations. Williams Formula One, good for a long time. And they looked at all sorts of things, and they said you have to align your front office and your back office. You've got to align your production with your why, all sorts of things. But in the end, it came down to the passion of the industry. It comes back to the passion for the business, that culture that you're talking about. And a lot of that comes from leadership. I think we've seen your leadership on display today, Sam. Thank you very much. If I summarize what you said about going into business, it was about passion, though. It was about it's all passion. You've got to really want to do this, not just buy a car.
That's right. That's exactly right. Be prepared.
What's next for you?
Well, we've got a variety of things on the go at the same time. We are in the process of setting up another engineering company in Queensland to try and pick up some of the local content work that's state-driven.
Is that rail or you can't say? Or?
Rail,
okay.
Rail, yeah. There's a $7 billion rail contract that's been announced, and I love the fact that they only want to deal with companies in that state. So we're looking to expand into Queensland and into Victoria. And more so, the exciting part is once that settles down, we really want to have a good look at some other compatible industries and show these industries what a highly skilled rail supplier can offer them. I think they're going to be quite impressed, and I think the competition should be worried.
Sounds fantastic. Sounds good. Well, I wish you all the best. If anyone wants to know more about Sam, hook up via LinkedIn, which is a great place. Sam's page has lots of short videos and a lot of interesting stuff. It's well worth following. All the best, Sam. Thank you for being on Supply Circles.
Thanks again, James, and all the best.
Thanks very much. And that's it for Supply Circles for this fortnight. We'll be back in a fortnight with some more stories of supply circles and the supplier improvement process. Bye for now. I'm James Scotland. See ya.